the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, you know, days in the 80s, fondle slab of choice, I don't know, computers, internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to just read these two sources whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. You expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man, huh?
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from FEMA Region 2, within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original.
We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
Thursday night, February 26, 2015, the Ochelli Effect, as the obnoxious bumper tells you. Chuck Ochelli, your host, speaking. Anyway, interesting day, as it were. And of course I'm now going to notice every time I use that particular phrase, because it was pointed out to me on Saturday. But anyway, that's the way I speak. What can I do? A little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of strangeness, whatever. Thank you for tuning in, bothering to listen, catching it downstream on YouTube or whatever, utilizing your Fondle Slab of Choices app in order to take a listen tonight on UCY.TV radio, because we are live. Anyhow, boy. So, net neutrality passed, and, and the whole DHS funding thing is a big deal, right? Okay, wonderful. Oh, boy. Oh, more radicalized Westerners. Yes. There were the men in Brooklyn. There was some others in Florida, apparently, that were attempting to defect over to the boogeyman enemy of choice at the moment, which is the ISIL construct. And this is supposed to be news right on the anniversary of the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, or what used to be the World Trade Center, or what seemed to be the World Trade Center at any rate. The alleged bombing of terrorists who were not allegedly, but definitely part of an FBI sting, as per usual. Isn't it fun how these guys always seem to come out of these stings and seem to have connections and interactions with the federal agencies that are ostensibly out there to protect us all? Good Lord. Right. Anybody who can't remember that, just think back a little bit to the truck bomb that, was allegedly tracked down by the VIN number, the vehicle identification number, that is, to a guy named Ramzi Youssef. We had the whole concept of the blind sheik or sheikh or whatever it is you call him, who definitely wanted to bring down America, and that was the whole thing. And gee, the next time, if you remember ever watching the dramatization of that, which I did many years ago, excuse me, if you remember watching the dramatization of that, at the very, very end, of course, the character, I think, representing Youssef, said, "Next time we will bring both of them down." Predictive programming. But, despite the fact that, there's plenty of evidence that the guy who actually built the bomb was under the control of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, yet the Fibbies actually had control of the guy who built the bomb. What a shocker. Oh, man. Anyway, I'm not going to bother to prolong any of this kind of discussion. What I am going to do, because I've had a little bit of trouble today, is I'm going to attempt to try and we shall see if this works. going to attempt to bring somebody in on the call. And, let's see now. Let's see how this works, because, I had loads and loads of trouble trying to get this done before. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Now the Skype seems to be cooperating, and with any sort of luck, I will actually have Frank Gregory Ford on in just a moment, and believe me, his perspective on this, and I know we're going to revisit some of those old topics that I've already covered here, but I think they bear repeating, and of course we're going to look a little bit at the current events. I mean, after all, RT now has a guy who's out there. Of course, he's more connected to the Libyan situation, but either way, they have a guy out there now that they say was also renditioned, tortured, whatever, right? Now let's see. Add to group call. Let's see if it works, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Ever since they changed the the orientation of the Skype, it has not.
Enjoy this Verizon ringback tone while your party is.
We're gonna get a Verizon ringback tone. Hold on.
Hello?
Mr. Ford.
Yes, the humble Dr. Ford here.
Yes, sir. Sorry about the number that came through there, but we are on the air.
Great, excellent. Okay, well, it is a beautiful day to be on the air, isn't it?
Well, in some parts of the country that are not covered by the cold snap, but...
Okay, well, it's a bone-shattering 72 degrees out here on the coast with trade winds blowing in from the ocean. So, I'll try to suffer through this and do my best to give your listeners a great presentation today, because we've got some great things to talk about.
Well, a lot of things to talk about, and I was just in my lead up to bringing you on, because I had to do this a little differently than I have before, because there's always fun with trying to get in contact with you, I got to say. I don't know where it comes from, but here we go. Anyhow, I was discussing how, of course, on the anniversary of the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, we're confronted with these supposedly radicalized Westerners. The three guys in Brooklyn. We're looking at people in Florida. There's people all over the nation that are apparently going with this boogeyman creation. So, I don't buy it. And of course, we learned later on about that whole situation in '93 that the guy who actually built the bomb was actually in control as a confidential informant of the FBI. Which is always a wonderful thing to see, that they always claim to never have any knowledge of these things before they happen, and yet when you actually peel back the layers of the onion, you find out that they kind of knew what was going on all along. In fact, they always seem to have these informants in good positions, and of course this made me think of one of the situations with you where the guy who's supposed to be in charge of this giant boogeyman ISIS was a man that you knew actually recruited as an asset while you were in theater in Iraq.
It's a small world, isn't it? And if you pay attention, if everybody pays attention, you find that history tends to go full circle. Just wait long enough, and everything tends to go right around, and in one great big circle. You mentioned the '93 bombings. Just about that time, and in '93, when the World Trade Center was bombed the first time, terrorism, it was talked about sort of once in a while by a few doom and gloomers. Okay, the bad old terrorists are gonna try to do something, to America. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. But everybody just kind of laughed down their sleeves, especially government types. And I can remember looking at this. This was a British intelligence reference map, and I was still in the intelligence community back then, and it seems like I've been in the intelligence community almost all my life. But they had all the terrorist training camps located in Libya. Libya was the ground zero for almost all the terrorist activity and terrorist production. And word was there was between 2,000 to 5,000 hardcore, well-trained terrorists being turned loose on the world back then. But the thing was, nothing really happened. It was kind of like they're all dressed up and nowhere to go. Okay, so
well, and you know what that makes me think of, Mr. Ford, is remember when there was that whole, terrorist summit that occurred in Cuba. I don't know if people recall this, but if you look hard enough, you can find film out there, of people like Yasser Arafat and other big names that, became names
Carlos,
over the years. Right, Carlos the Jackal, all these guys meeting in Cuba. Right, right off of our shores. I mean, a stone's throw, as it were. Speaking, kind of metaphorically, as far as we look at the world map. Right, there were all of these terrorist summits. There were these terrorist meetings. There were these great groups of individuals. And you know what? At the end of the day, the amount of damage sustained on U.S. soil or on U.S. assets was really minimal. And therefore was more like an over there problem. You know what I mean? They tantalized us in the 70s and the 80s, and here I go dating myself, but they tantalized us in the 70s and 80s with the concept of hijacking. Okay? There was the biggest terrorist mastermind, scary man on the planet was named Imad Mughniyeh. I kid you not, that was the guy's name. I recall it from my own memory without an issue. But you know who I'm talking about.
Mughniyeh, right?
Yeah,
Did you say Mughniyeh?
Yep.
Oh, yes, very familiar with Mughniyeh. Okay. But of course, he ran into a tougher customer. Okay. It's called the Israeli Mossad.
There you go.
And yeah, right, you bet. Right. No. In fact, there's some conjecture right now in that vein about who actually was responsible for taking out Mr. Mughniyeh. Okay. And of course, the CIA is trying to say that they did it. But smart money is on, of course, the premier assassination team on the globe, which is the Israeli Mossad.
Well, there you go. And
yes, right. And of course, then they had Abu Nidal. They had a whole plethora of really tough guys running around doing all kinds of bad things. But the thing was that nothing really happened. A few cafes were shot up in Paris. A few people were shot in the head. Ambassadors were shot in the head. But nothing really triggered anything in a spectacular fashion. Now, the World Trade Center bombing was very interesting because you are absolutely correct, Chuck. Is that we had, and I don't quite understand the thinking on this. Is that the FBI says, "Oh yes, we
infiltrated,
penetrated, infiltrated and penetrated." I was going to say infested, but penetrated. These terrorist groups, and we knew what they were doing. Well, if you knew what they were doing, then how did you manage to allow the World Trade Center to have a great big truck bomb, go into the basement and blow up, almost bringing it down? Okay, it was weeks of preparation for that. How did you manage to have that happen? And of course, your listeners know me. I was, along with my team, my counterintelligence team, we were in Arizona, and we were briefed. We were briefed at length by Colonel Anthony Schaefer. All right, Colonel Anthony Schaefer and Abel Danger. Okay, they were actively monitoring two groups of Al Qaeda terrorists that were going to hijack planes, and fly them into the World Trade Center. Imagine all of this. Imagine looking back now, hindsight in 2020 and all that. Imagine this. And they were going to hit select targets around the Washington, D.C. area. Imagine, all right? And sure enough, they did it. But up until that point, everybody just kind of poo-pooed the whole thing. And you look at the Bush administration, they even poo-pooed it right up to the time that those planes were slamming into those towers. Okay, so
right, because also in that same vein and during that same time period prior to 9/11, we're talking pre 9/11, right? Pre 9/11,
Right.
we also had the Oklahoma City bombing, which is allegedly a homegrown sort of terror. See, this is where I start to intermingle these things in my mind, because they're giving us the threatening idea that an OKC bombing could happen again. This time it would be radicalized, people that are sympathizers with these Muslim boogeymen across the sea, who have gotten together over social media, which is a joke in and of itself. Because you mean to tell me that the intelligence agencies are not fully aware of what's going on Facebook and Twitter accounts? I mean, really? I mean, this is the kind of thing.
Well, not according to Mr. Brennan, who is now running the CIA, who, by the way, was entirely responsible for stamping the visas and allowing the 19 hijackers into the United States, and overrode my associates' warning, that these guys were there to commit the 9/11 atrocities. And of course, he is now in charge of the CIA, but 5 days ago, he came out and made the announcement that, the CIA is getting into the business of spying on the Internet. You say what? Yeah, the CIA is going to start spying on the Internet? Okay. I mean, gee, let's slam the barn door after the horse is long gone and out of sight, okay? And coming from him, of all people, coming from Mr. Brennan, of all people, I find that really ironic. And by the way, that leads me into what the CIA said 5 days ago. You want to go into that, Chuck?
Well, which thing do we want to go into?
Oh, sure. Well, okay, sure. Yeah, I'd love to go into that. Okay, the situation is that I've been telling your listeners, okay, for how many shows now? Weapons of mass destruction, American-made U.S. weapons were manufactured in the United States and shipped to Iraq. All right? For 12 years now, I have been stating exactly that. I have the registration numbers of those weapons. Those are part of my court action. In my court action in San Francisco on the Ninth Circuit Court, those weapons are listed, part of my exhibits, and of course everybody's just been poo-pooing the whole idea. Oh, how funny, big joke. Oh yeah, gee, yeah, a whole presidency is lying to the American people. That would mean that the presidency knew that those weapons were U.S. manufactured. And here's the caveat, Chuck, and for your listeners, is those weapons were actually manufactured and ordered by the, I hope everybody's listening, the Carlyle Group. Is anybody out there shocked, to hear that? The Carlyle Group, who is responsible for the founding, and business of the Carlyle Group? George H.W. Bush, all right? Taking advantage of his vote as Vice President of the United States under Ronald Reagan. Okay, of course that doesn't take a whole lot of brain power to figure out how to get away with something under Ronald Reagan, but he voted twice. He could have completely dismantled the chemical warfare program for weapons of mass destruction. He could have had those erased from world history. And he voted twice to keep those weapons alive and the research going to make better weapons of mass destruction. George H.W. Bush. If you shop in any store now, you see his mug on the National Enquirer. It says the passing of a great man. Oh, really? Gosh, where was I when I was standing in the bunker? Okay. Counting the 29 warheads of weapons of mass destruction at Balad in Iraq, where was I when this great man was doing all of this work? All right, and bringing the world to a destructive edge, which it is now. We're sitting on an edge of almost total annihilation right now.
Well, and let's be specific about what it is that you saw there, because this is something you laid your own eyes on. And
right.
We're talking about, and this is sort of a generally accepted definition, okay, for VX gas. Yes, I did say VX, okay? And that is the weapon that we're talking about here. And here's the thing. It is generally accepted that it is the most toxic nerve agent ever synthesized, for which...
on the planet. On the planet, Chuck. On the planet.
I mean,
yes,
you're talking about something that is, 20 to 50 micrograms of aerosolized, particulate is lethal to the human being. And the nature of this nerve gas is, this is not a defensive weapon, folks. I mean, I know that, and if you go to the military.gov, they define it as as a battle, like a control weapon for an area. I forget what the exact phrase is for that. But you know what I'm talking about here, right?
These weapons, these specific weapons were produced in the 80s, after George H.W. Bush had the overriding vote, which kept those weapons in our U.S. arsenal and on the U.S. Command's Central Weapons Register or log. All right, these weapons are so lethal that a micro droplet, which is a fog the size of a fog droplet, on your skin, on a human being's skin, will kill you. It's always terminal, always lethal. It's 100% destructive. Those weapons are so overwhelming in their destruction, the nature of their destruction, that they are right up there with nuclear radioactivity. Plutonium. All right. So Mr. George H.W. Bush was responsible for not only the weapons program, the Big I program. The Big I program was another U.S. contract failed program that actually ended up causing the Carlyle Group to purchase and order. And this is what I found. This is what I found in the bunker in Iraq. All right. In the bunker in Iraq, I found 29 warheads, P-400 converted 1,000-pound bomb casings. The bills of lading demonstrated and recorded that these weapons had been reconfigured at Fort Rucker, Alabama. Fort Rucker, Alabama. That's pretty American to me. Mm-hmm. From there, they were shipped and held in storage until being charged with the VX component, the organophosphate platinum oxidizer component, which is VX/GF. And the /GF means that these weapons have no antidote whatsoever. There's no way to stop these weapons from killing. Even if you are in a MOP suit, a chemical suit, you will die if exposed to these weapons once they're aerosolized. And these weapons were then shipped via railhead to the Houston waterway, and from there they were loaded intentionally. These weapons were loaded intentionally onto the USS Wabash. That's a Navy transport ship. Now, the irony is, if you were to look up, the Senate hearings on weapons, the Senate said under no circumstances are these weapons to be shipped for any offensive reason, only on a global emergency where one of our allies is about to be overrun. That is the only justification for these weapons to exist. All right? These weapons were then, of course, under the control of the Carlyle Group. That means that we had a sitting president producing weapons of mass destruction that were sold via the Bocce Bank, Bank of Credit and Commerce International, and everybody should be asking, well, who is that? It's real simple. Look up George H.W. Bush and the Bocce Bank. All right, it's just that simple. Who financed the entire process with the Bank of Iraq, and headed up by one of my sources, when I was in Iraq, Abu Sager, Abu Sager, S-E-G-E-R. His actual name, that is his Arabic colloquial. His actual name is Ali Saad, S-A-apostrophe-A-D, Hassan. All right? Everybody should look that up because you're going to find something very interesting. You will find that name means the banker of Saddam Hussein. He was the banker of Saddam Hussein who purchased those weapons of mass destruction and from America through the Bachi Bank. And who else? Whenever I say this, who else? Everybody knows that means automatically Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney actually flew to Iraq, met with Hussein, shook his hand, and within hours, those weapons were being dropped on the heads of running, fleeing Kurds in Halabja, okay, during the Anfal campaign. Thousands and thousands of Kurds being killed with weapons of mass destruction from America. America, all right? Not Russia, not anybody else, America, all right? And then things weren't just, I mean, we hadn't made enough money. Carlisle hadn't made enough money. Okay, the Bushes hadn't made enough money, so they turned right around, sold more to Hussein, who then proceeded to drop those on the heads of Iranian soldiers in the Shah-Rock waterway. All right, and the world is terrified of Iran having weapons of mass destruction. Okay, I find the irony is almost overwhelming. All right, all these people worried about Iran having nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Look at us. We'll sell you weapons of mass destruction wholesale. Okay, and then if things don't go well, we'll turn right around and we'll launch a war in your country to take those weapons back, which is exactly the weapons which I found in the bunker at Balad Air Base. So, as of 5 days ago, of course, the administration was busy telling everybody how upset they were, the Bush administration, how they couldn't find weapons of mass destruction. They knew that they were really there, but gosh, and of course, in the meantime, we invaded Iraq. We decimated Iraq. It was the only bulwark against a complete disaster, which it has now become, run by ISIS. Okay, ISIS and Iran. Mm-hmm. By the way, Iran actually runs Baghdad. Okay, for those folks who aren't in the know about this. Okay, ISIS is beyond all description in their presence and operation in Iraq. So 5 days ago, after me telling the whole world this and getting poo-pooed and laughed at, okay, for the last 12 years, launching court cases, which, as all your listeners know the court case number, if they can look it up, these weapons of mass destruction are now, surprised, as of 5 days ago, the CIA stated that, yes, they have been buying back, oh, my goodness, what did I say? Weapons of mass destruction. They have been buying back chemical weapons of mass destruction from, who else? Iraq and Syria. Okay? You can go back in my record, and when I debriefed the FBI, and I said, look, these weapons, the ones that were left, were shipped to these specific sites in Syria. Okay? 8 months ago, 10 months ago, we had a 10,000-man NBC specialized force sitting in Amman, Jordan, waiting to rush in to try to grab those weapons. Okay? Obviously, they didn't make it. So now we have to turn right around and do something incredibly stupid, like buy our own weapons of mass destruction back. And what happened the week before last? Our U.S. diplomat was in Germany, picked up by German intelligence and German police, carrying several $100 million of counterfeit money, counterfeit dollars, to who else? ISIS. He was paying protection money from us to ISIS. Okay? Obviously, ISIS has those weapons. Okay? A big chunk of those weapons. Well, the CIA said last week, oh, gee, gosh, yeah, we've been buying those back in secret, of course, all right, from Iraq and Syria, and we are doing it and I got really misty-eyed when I heard this. Okay, I really was taken back that they said that they were deeply concerned. The CIA was deeply concerned that U.S. Army troops had been subjected to a possible aerosolized version of these chemical neurotoxins that might have been released. Because, surprise, our troops are showing up now at the VA hospitals with neurotoxin symptomologies. All right? Mm-hmm. So, what have I been saying? What have I been saying to everybody? It's gone into a court case, and here it is. And not only did Dianne Feinstein say that the torture issues at Abu Ghraib, my command, by the way, were absolutely correct and true, okay, and that, yes, I was strapped to a stretcher and tortured to find out, first of all, who my sources were, and secondly, who I'd contacted in the U.S. concerning those issues. And then, on top of everything else, we create a international air incident going into Germany with me, okay, against my will, being renditioned. And of course, do you think the U.S. would learn a lesson there? Of course not. And then they proceed to slander me intentionally for 10 years. Okay, you can go to my site. Okay, and I was going to say, even on the Abu Sager issue, if you type in the name Abu Sager, you will see my reports on the beating death of Abu Sager, and he was beaten to death by our CIA interrogators, and you will see my abduction, okay, carefully spelled out in government documents. All right, you will see my abduction spelled out. So hopefully those folks in Europe are listening to this, Chuck. Okay, because this is a very important week that we've had so far. Okay, with ISIS.
Well, see, that's the thing, is every time something else comes out, it just seems to, you're getting more and more backing for your story as we discover these things that, are supposed to be big shockers to the people that are involved with this, right? You're going to tell me that, the Senate Intelligence Committee didn't know about this stuff when it was happening? No. That's absolutely impossible. You're going to tell me that, that we weren't aware that, certain people were out of control. We had, we had all sorts of evidence of this stuff going on. It just gets admitted to, like, bled out very slowly over time. But as time goes on, your story seems to be getting more and more verified, sir.
Well, yeah, it's getting plenty of traction. Now, I'm expecting to hear from the courts any day now, okay, whether we can have what's called oral argument, all right? Now, your listeners know me by now, know me well enough to know that, the last thing the courts want are me talking, okay, about this subject matter in a courtroom, all right? Because they are going to hear how a U.S. president, 2 U.S. presidents specifically arranged to have business dealings with the Middle East despots, sold weapons of mass destruction, and then when things went south, which of course they would, when it went south, then we turned right around and did the unspeakable. We actually invaded those countries to the tune of several $1 trillion, to the tune of several thousand troops dead, American troops dead. How many dead Iraqis and dead Syrians, and then turn the place into a charnel house? It is a charnel house right now. It is a slaughterhouse. Okay, as a direct result of the U.S., United States of America's interference based on capitalist exploitation of the war markets, weapons markets.
See, right? but this has been the case for well over a decade. This is what the thing is. People talk about, and especially the mainstream, about we're going to have to go back into Iraq. Should we have to go back? Go back. We never left. And by this is the thing. You broke it, you bought it, and it got broken. I mean, they completely balkanized the entire area. Which created some legitimate kickback. I mean, I think personally that any of these names that we're hearing. See, here's the reality behind intelligence, and here's something that I have a hard time getting people to understand, is that generally speaking, the real big names, the people that are actually pulling the triggers, the people that are actually coming up with the plans, are usually the names you don't get to hear. Okay? You don't. When they are constantly touting this whole ISIL, ISIS construct, to me it seems like, there's other people holding that leash that have nothing to do with, the angry Muslim population, which is there. And legitimately so, because after all, and people bring up Abu Ghraib and they don't realize the gravity of that situation. It was a whole lot more than just putting some hoods over some naked guys' heads and making them make human pyramids. Okay, this was not this was not all there was to it. And over time, little bits and pieces have leaked out. You've told some stories on the air here that have been pretty extreme. Okay, but I don't doubt them, because I know very well that this is exactly the nature of what was going on there. This was completely out of control. This is what got you in trouble, is that you actually had a conscience, and didn't want to continuously deal with this stuff. I mean, you were there patching up people that were being tortured, and man, and nice way to repay somebody actually having a conscience, and this is why virtually your entire command structure who was in the loop is now basically a defendant in your lawsuit, all except the general who was actually in charge. Let's make that make that perfectly clear.
Right.
General Karpinski, who lost her star over this, and I guess to some degree she's been sort of rehabilitated since. But the thing is that's an incredible mess that they dragged her into, because they kept her out of the loop. It's almost like, where did their orders come from? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, now, General Karpinski, by the way, as she once told me, she said, and that was the first time in U.S. history that a general has actually lost their star, had their general command removed. All right. That's the first time that's ever happened. Okay. And it's kind of ironic, because I am the first U.S. citizen ever to be renditioned, tortured, okay, flown out of the country covertly without any orders, and of course, and then bring a lawsuit on him. I'm the first to ever do that. But General Karpinski told me, several times now, she said, look, if any of my reports had actually escaped the command and gotten into the chain of command, which they should have, they were supposed to. By law, that my intelligence reports are supposed to move directly up the chain. They're not supposed to be picked up along the way by people that have figure salary interests, that in mind, as the entire group of defendants that are in my court case did. All went to work for big defense contractors for six figures. All right, they're all sitting right now in McLean, Virginia, okay, working, for Booz Allen. Okay, does that name ring a bell with anybody? Has anybody ever heard of Ed Snowden? Okay, well, guess who he was working for also? And the Copper Green program, the logistics that support the Copper Green program, this infamous 70-nation, rendition program. 70 countries are tied in with the Copper Green program. All right, Booz Allen is logistically supporting these torture black ops facilities. Did anybody see what happened in Poland last week? Okay, yes, Poland said, the international court said, hey, these people were renditioned illegally. They are to be let out and paid thousands and thousands in damages. All right. See what happened in Morocco? We have now an international incident 2 weeks ago, with one of the black ops sites. Okay, These are U.S. sites holding foreign nationals ostensibly under counterterrorism. Okay, counterterrorism. There's the T word again, for terrorism. All right, they are holding thousands of people, generate revenue. Okay, this stuff has not stopped just because a few people like myself have raised a little bit of ire with the public. No, they are generating revenue. The agency is generating revenue as we speak based on torture, mayhem, murder, okay, of foreign nationals that nobody has ever heard of, but we have these 70 governments busy signed on paying to have these people. That's the American way, by the way. Is, you know, if somebody's willing to pay, we'll do anything, okay, for them. If somebody pays, we're willing to ship them weapons of mass destruction and annihilate hundreds of thousands of people, okay, and then turn right around and when we lose control of the user of those weapons, which is what happened with Saddam Hussein, turn right around and invade the country, you know, to the tune of several $1 trillion.
Well, and
that's
you know,
what has happened to this country.
And you know what's really fascinating to me is that, you know, people often, you know, they recognize certain corporate names, but they don't recognize them all because they're covered under these euphemisms in a lot of cases. Asset allocation, you know, being their primary business, as it were, right? Not only asset allocation, but management of logistical planning. Things like this. I mean, all these odd euphemisms for, you know, we're moving things around and we're managing things that are valuable. You know, quite often these are the companies, you know, when they're very, very large and you can't really seem to track down exactly what it is they do, but they have some prominent people on their boards of directors. You know, example, Carlisle. But, you know,
Right.
this is exactly the way this works, you know, and every, just, I mean, with all of the places on the planet where we have military installations, I mean, something like, you know, there's only 170 possible national locations for us to be in, you know, and I think we're in like 150 of them at this point, you know, and I'm pretty sure I'm being generous here. You know, these other companies under the guise of being private contractors come in, get intermingled with this stuff, and then, you know, whatever has, you know, come down through the military chain of command is then married along with this other agenda, which is a large corporate agenda, which has, you know, a lot to do with feeding the military-industrial complex, and we're talking about the industrial and the complex side of it now, as opposed to the military side of it. You know, here we go. This is how business is done. And I cannot avoid the idea in my mind that a lot of this stuff has absolutely been, you know, done on purpose. It's been planned from the beginning to be like this. We were meant to be involved in these long quagmires that, you know, that don't seem so bad because we're constantly having to fight an ideology as opposed to a nation state. Because after a while, you'd get kind of, I don't know, concerned that the great military power on the planet wasn't able to completely decimate one particular nation state, right? So after a while, you need, you know, an ever-changing amorphous boogeyman that you can keep, you know, saying, well, oh, he's not there anymore, he's over here. He's not there anymore, he's over here. You know, this is the way that this kind of business is done. And, you know, again, I'm not asking you to explain all that. But I mean, you know, I wish you would tell me I was crazy. I really do, because I would hate to think that the world works this way. But you happen to know for a fact that I'm not that far off.
This is big business, and this is how it's put to the global population. Semantical misdirection. All right, you never call something, you know, that, you know what it is. You know, never call it that real name. Okay, that's just not the way business is done. All right. Now, Chuck, you were saying that there's a large European audience listening right now to the show, correct?
Well, I don't know if we have them, but I do know that I made people across the pond quite aware that, that you would be on tonight.
I've got something for the Europeans. Okay, listening. Okay. When I was renditioned, you know, and strapped to a stretcher, forcibly, tortured, and then illegally flown in an international incident through German airspace, I was, you know, contacted by some very interesting people. One was Josh Phillips, who was in Syria. And he contacted me, and he was in Damascus, Syria, and he ended up writing a book about, you know, basically my story. And then I was contacted by Hilmar Buchel. Okay, anybody in Germany should know that name. Hilmar Buchel. He's a senior editor of Der Spiegel.
Der Spiegel.
And Der Spiegel, he actually brought an entire film crew over to the U.S. and they did my story. Okay, and presented my story in Germany. Now, if you go back in the archives of Der Spiegel, you will see my story, and it was one of the most watched programs, okay, biography programs, especially on Iraq, for 3 nights. They ran it for 3 nights consecutively. And it was one of the most interesting shows ever presented in Europe. And it caused an uproar, all right, mainly by the fact that, Germany actually has laws that they try to obey, not like America, that, well, hey, we'll just use another set of laws to break our own laws, okay, and that's okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
No, Germany actually has a history, a tawdry history, and as a result, they go overboard almost to make sure that they don't repeat the same mistakes, all right, which is something that America hasn't quite learned how to do yet, is don't repeat the same mistakes. We're doing it right now, okay? Mm-hmm. As this show is going, we've got people headed back into Iraq right now, all right? So, but anyway, he did a biography on me, and it was extremely well received, but it set the standard for torture and mayhem and rendition in Europe, all right? It was me, okay? It was done on me, absolutely. So what we have there is the Europeans have been aware of what has been going on since basically I was renditioned through their airspace. Now, the irony is that we have now, okay, as a result of one of my former associates in Iraq, we have one of the greatest terrorist armies now on the rampage. And we are looking at Armageddon. Okay, that's all there is to it. Okay, I don't think Megiddo is too far away from the center of activity. And the problem is, and the world needs to know this, is there is nuclear detonation capability in Iraq. And guess who put it there? Who else? Right? Remember, that's my key phrase there for all your listeners. Who else put it there? Okay, these nuclear detonating materials. Okay, these pits. They're called nuclear pits. Okay, if you look up the first executive order of George W. Bush, the village idiot's son. Okay, who was shoved down America's throat. All right, that was his first executive order, was to order the construction and engineering at Los Alamos, New Mexico, of nuclear pits that would detonate dirty bomb material. Okay? I'm warning the world right now on your show. This is what is going on. Those nuclear detonators, okay, which were stored at the Al-Aqsa facility. I'm saying this slowly so people can take notes and check this out. All right? Those weapons were brought to the world and placed in the hands of ISIS, okay, ISIS, they were brought by who else? But Dick Cheney, okay, and who ordered Halliburton Logistics to ship these detonators, these nuclear pits, from Los Alamos under the control and command of Admiral Tom Lopez, all right? Tom Lopez. And Admiral Tom Lopez actually resigned and retired his naval commission to go to work for Halliburton Logistics to get these nuclear detonators into Iraq. Well, I'm just a humble civil servant myself. I've always considered myself nothing more than just exactly that. And I thought, okay, when we found these detonators in Al-Aqsa facility, weapons depot, okay, just south of Balad, all right, those weapons, okay, there was 15, but I know there were probably more, okay, those weapons had been brought there, and I wasn't sure what. It took me several years of talking to nuclear engineers to figure out exactly what I had seen. Okay, they teach intelligence operatives a lot of things, but they don't teach them everything. And so I was able to evaluate what Valerie Plame, remember the CIA agent that was outed and her cover was blown by who else? Dick Cheney. Okay, who else? All right, Dick Cheney. But after she had said, yes, there is a danger of nuclear power generation facilities in Iraq generating enough material for several dirty bombs. All right? Imagine this information was known by Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and George W. Bush. Okay?
Well, Mr. Ford, I got you. I want to interrupt you, though, really quickly, because I got a phone caller that joined in. Barry Prince has called in to add into the discussion here. Barry, you been listening?
Actually just got in the house and tuned in here. I was running around downtown.
Okay.
But, just joined.
Have you ever heard Frank Gregory Ford on my show before?
No, I haven't, Charles. How you doing, Mr. Ford?
Barry Prince, that's a great name. I won't forget that.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's something you want to forget or not, but no. It's the name I was given, so there you go.
also a radio host on Shake and Wake Radio. The Big Puzzle is Barry's show. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I get on Babel once a week.
Well, to give you the quick, sorry, Barry. To give you the quick rundown here about Mr. Ford, this is the man that I've talked about on other shows. That was a witness to actual weapons of mass destruction being present in Iraq. That it was VX gas, VX nerve agent. Let me be specific. That was attached to these particular types of warheads. That he actually saw in a bunker that were destroyed by British operatives over there, by the way. So there were actually weapons found, first of all. Second of all, it was also his command that was at Abu Ghraib's. I'm sure you're familiar with that name, Barry.
I've heard that name before. Mm-hmm.
So you know about the concept of the torture and the things that came out of the Abu Ghraib's prison facility in Iraq, right?
I've done some looking into it, Charles, but just briefly on the surface.
Well,
yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Well, here's a man that tells us that, quite honestly, the putting of hoods on people's heads and the, posed photographs are definitely far from the reality of what was going on there. Got himself in a lot of trouble. He's the only U.S. intelligence operative that I've ever heard of to have actually been renditioned out of an active war zone and survive. Okay? So there you go. Normally, as a matter of fact, this is something I wanted to make sure that I stressed, is that, Mr. Ford, generally speaking, a guy like you is not allowed to survive. They usually make sure to dispose of a guy like you. And, of course, it was some very intuitive thinking on Mr. Ford's part that kept him alive. I wondered if you wouldn't kind of recap that for Barry and for the rest of the listeners about how it is that, first of all, after protesting over the fact that you had gone through all of this trouble because you were trained as a let's just call it a battle medic, but you had a lot of training and a lot of medical expertise, which was being utilized to patch up people that had endured a lot of this quote unquote enhanced interrogation, right?
Yes, I was already a naturopathic physician, and I was halfway through medical school when I was given the marching orders to go to Iraq. And I had four separate, what are called MOS, okay, military occupation specialty, medical specialties, all right, medical designators, all right. So, yes, after almost 30 years of being in the business of intelligence and medicine, yes, I was there, and that's what my job was. I was the sole medical representative and provider for my team, all right, and that was in both Samarra and Abu Ghraib, and it was my job to take care of both the victims of our interrogation, and that's what I'm calling it. Forget this politically correct nonsense. Yeah, they were victims of our interrogation and our own personnel. The more we tortured, the more problems we caused in the city of Samarra, by the way, which is the hometown of ISIS. That's a big popular name now. The worst things got on our command. We were in the police station there in Samara, and you could, every night people were screaming, bloody murder from interrogation, and people, as I found internationally, all over the world, they take real exception when you torture their loved ones. Okay, they really don't like it. All right, and I have found over the years that you can go into a village, you can shoot up a village, kill a few people, and sure, they'll be angry about it, but they'll get over it. You go in and you grab children or loved ones from people, and you torture them, they never forgive. They never forget, all right? And they will try to kill you, and that's exactly the way the Iraqis behaved towards us when Abu Ghraib broke. I don't know if you remember the 60 Minutes scandal, okay, the 60 Minutes episode that showed, they only showed 5 photos, by the way,
right,
but of what was going on at Abu Ghraib. But those 5 photos, as I just talked to somebody yesterday who was doing an extensive biography and also examining the Supreme Court case that happened as a result of my case, said that those 5 photos shook the world. That was 60 Minutes that shook the world, okay? Within 24 hours, the entire world knew what we had done, and we were defeated as a result, okay? There was no way we could have prevailed in Iraq as a result of what those 5 photos showed, all right? The irony is I knew all those kids that were in the photo, okay? And I also knew who was giving them the orders to do what they were doing, and so, which is all part of my case. But,
right. And of course,
yes.
the thing that I always point out is that really what they showed in those photos was laughable compared to the reality that was there.
Hey, by the way, Mr. Okay, you said I was the only one to be renditioned. Well, you're absolutely. I am the only U.S. citizen to be renditioned, tortured, and flown out of a country without any kind of official acknowledgement. Technically, for your listeners and Mr. Prince, I am still in Iraq. Okay, although where I'm sitting from, it doesn't look like Iraq. I am still in Iraq. If you were to check all the personnel records, I am still in Iraq. I never left officially. All right. Now, here's a name that you're going to be hearing extensively in the next few weeks, and it's a sensational case. Of course, our media doesn't want you to hear this, and the CIA does not want you to hear this name. This name is Abdel Belhaj. All right, Mr. Belhaj is in pretty much the same position that I was, okay? He was the leader of the insurgent army, which he formed, directed, organized, and led against, it was financed by the CIA, by the way, and he led this army that he put together against Muammar Gaddafi. He overthrew Muammar Gaddafi, and the agency was so grateful, okay? They were so thrilled with what he'd done that and this might sound deja vu, okay, for your listeners, but he was strapped to a stretcher. He was tortured on the stretcher, and then, for good measure, okay, because you know how these torturers, kind of hate to have unfinished business. They brought in his family, and his family was tortured in front of him while he was still on the stretcher, okay. Well, Mr. Belhaj, of course, went into hiding, and he is now able to speak publicly with several news agencies in Europe. And he is talking about things that the agency simply does not want known, all right? The agency is culpable, and I'm holding the agency culpable in my case, all right? Yeah, and Department of Defense in my case. But Mr. Belhaj, his story is unbelievable. Most people wouldn't believe it. It's just that simple. It's unbelievable. Okay, so here we are at this juncture. Okay, Libya is about to explode. All right, Libya is virtually the home of terrorism as we know it in the last 2.5 to 3 decades. The 9/11, which is still being sorted out. Okay, the 9/11, as your listeners know, it was Anthony Schaefer who briefed myself and my operative group, what to expect, and it did happen. How often does that happen? And then we have my former recruited asset, charging around Syria and Iraq, okay, terrorizing the whole world. He's making the whole world shake right now, okay. Hard to believe that the punk that I knew, okay, that I recruited, because he was pretty smug about he knew who was holding Jessica Lynch, the female soldier, okay. I actually ended up recruiting this punk, okay, and I call him that because that's what he was behaving like, and it turns out that, and I'm going to tell everybody on your show these revelations about Mr. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, that's something the whole world doesn't know, all right? I hope everybody's radios are turned up, okay, because of this. Mr. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi headed up Mukhabarat, all right? Did I stutter? Did everybody hear that? Okay, Mukhabarat is the intelligence network that was built over 40 years by Saddam Hussein. It's the largest data intelligence bank and a group of computers in the Middle East, next to Israel's probably.
Yeah, I was going to say you got to qualify that, because you got to remember that the Israelis have many things that we don't really have knowledge of yet. But
yes.
So Barry, I'm
Mr.
wondering.
Baghdadi, right?
Go ahead. Just one thing really quick, because Barry, I'm wondering what you think of all of what you're hearing here.
First off, sir, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I commend you for your courage and what you're doing right now. And I wish there was 10,000 more Americans with the guts that you've got and take these matters to hand, because nothing surprises me anymore going on inside the U.S. government. You could tell me the worst story in the world, and I would have to believe it at this point. And yeah, there's lots of things they're not telling us about, Charles. Lots of little weapons and lots of little toys that they're going to definitely unleash on us when the time comes to be. So just a few comments, sir. I'm enjoying listening to your story here immensely. Thanks for coming on.
I'm sorry the wind is howling out here, but Chuck, I'm sorry, what did Mr. Prince, can you translate that? What did he just say?
Yeah, he's actually, I know how he's communicating with us, and he's probably having a little bit of a hard time hearing us, Barry. But the thing is that, Barry just pretty much said that, the worst stories in the world that you could possibly tell are just probably scraping the surface here regarding the horrors and the terrors that have been unleashed by the assets of the United States government at this point. And that he applauds you for your courage for coming out and speaking up about this. But not only is he doing this, say, on radio shows and stuff, Barry, but he's actually got a lawsuit against the United States government protesting the fact that he was renditioned, first of all. But also in his declaration to the court declares that these weapons of mass destruction, which were allegedly not found, you remember that, we couldn't find the weapons, right?
Right.
That he saw them for himself, that he witnessed them in a bunker in Iraq, that he knew that it was VX gas, that he, not gas, sorry, I keep saying gas, but it's not gas until it's aerosolized, excuse me. But we know what VX is. It's the most toxic nerve agent possibly ever created, for biochemical warfare. Okay, that this was in the hands of the Iraqis, and guess what? The bills of lading and the exact supply route comes from the Carlyle Group, which, guess what?
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Yeah, and you know the rest of the story there, don't you? So we knew the Iraqis had their weapons of mass destruction because we still had the receipts, or at least some of our people still had the receipts. You know what I'm saying? And this is I'm about to grab the link and see if I can find a copy of the lawsuit. I'm going to drop it into chat and also put it aside for you, Barry, so you can read his declaration, because it's amazing, and hopefully very soon they're going to allow oral arguments to go forward. But I'm thinking, Mr. Ford, they need to settle with you because they don't want the rest of this story out, on a public court document. That's what I'm figuring. But who knows? If you want to comment about the lawsuit, though, or explain the lawsuit, a little bit better than I just did, I'd really appreciate it. I'm going to try and grab a copy of it right now to put it in the chat room and everything for everybody.
Great. Yeah, yes, please do. There's something about putting something down where everybody can see it instead of just talking about it. That drives the point home. Now, yes, I agree. Yeah, and believe me, I want to talk about this case more than anybody does in a public forum. I want this information getting out. I have actually had court reporters contact me and say, my God in heaven, if any of this is true, this is the most earth-shaking information we've ever heard of, we've ever seen. We've never even heard of anybody even having something like this. And what is in my court case? Okay, and so yes, I will present it. And several of your listeners have already contacted me and said, "Look, we want to be there. We will be in the courtroom to support you." Okay, when this in San Francisco, right down the street from where my command was. My command in San Francisco on Zoo Road. Okay, where all of this started. Okay, all of this happened. All right, is right down the road from the courthouse. So, I'll invite everybody, if you don't mind, Chuck, I'll invite all your listeners to come, please, listen to me as I present this, all right? I think if I get the confirmation for go-ahead on oral arguments from the courts, I will put it out on your show when it's going to happen, okay? So they can come and listen to some of the most incredible information about how our government has misled, misdirected, and slaughtered, its own citizens, and taken us to two endless wars. I mean, are we out of Afghanistan? Doesn't look like it to me, okay? Remember, I'm an average guy, so I see things in average terms, okay? Are we out of Iraq? I don't think so. Are we headed to Libya? Yeah, it looks like it. Are we headed to Yemen? Yes, I think so. Okay, so.
So I'm laughing, Mr. Ford, because exactly what it is perpetual warfare, and it will never stop unless we stop it.
Well, exactly, and that is the point of this. And of course, I did just drop that link for everybody to go to the PDF, see one of the court filings. It's actually been filed in two different forms. I don't think I have the one that has the additional documents attached to it, but it's backed up by through. Despite the best efforts of the United States government to obfuscate your documents, which I have personal experience with. When the U.S. government decides to disappear your documents down the memory hole, they tried to get rid of even your personnel files, didn't they?
Yes, 30 years of history. I have no history left, okay? Now, fortunately, I have great researchers that, by the way, researchers are under onslaught, okay? Their systems are being assaulted every day right now as we are speaking by the U.S. government trying to figure out how my researchers got my information back, okay, and recovered it. But I want everybody just to see the statement from General Janis Karpinski, Brigadier General Janis Karpinski. So if you think I'm just a discontent, malcontent, average person, okay, think again. This is from Janis Karpinski, who was in charge of the entire prison system in Iraq. And she said, my God, Greg, if I had known what you sent and your reports had sent, I could have saved this America, probably the greatest crime scandal in the entire history. If I had just known what your reports were saying that you were sending out from the battlefield, all right?
Well, but that's precisely the point of what's done here, is that they kept her out of the loop, despite the fact that it's supposed to be her command. And again, I can't stress enough, this is the only general to ever lose their star over something like this. This is the only time that this has ever happened. And of course it was given back, though. Let's make that clear, right?
Right. Yeah. Surreptitiously, I think they call that.
Yeah.
Because then she said, okay, right. Well, I'll pull a Scooter Libby. Okay. You think I'm going to go down without a fight? Think again. Guess what? Guess what? New York Times, Washington Post. I've got a story for you. That's all it took. Okay, and then she got her star back.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that keeping her out of the loop was done with purpose, because she wouldn't have stood for it. There are moral people that are attempting to do things in the right way as best they can, under the information that they're given, that are in the military services. I say this all the time, and people do get angry at me for it. But you know what? I do know that this is the reality, and this is why you keep people like her out of the loop regarding stuff like this. And this is what happened, despite the fact that they completely violated the their own laws. They completely violated all military codes of conduct regarding keeping their commanders in the loop regarding all this stuff. I mean, and the thing is, this is not a group of rogue individuals either. This was a policy. This was a policy. There are probably 20 guys like you that I could talk to, but again, I guarantee you 19 of them are probably dead. Okay? The thing is that this is one of those really astounding things. And I love the explanation for how it is you figured out, and how you kind of kept it so that there was another pair of eyes on you, because if you were all alone there, you would have had, you probably wouldn't have stood a chance if they didn't have an outsider that would have become a serious problem for them. Actually, a couple of them, right?
By the way, I got some other information. I don't know if I've had a chance to put it out for your people. And I agree with you, Chuck. Absolutely, I agree with you. You're right on. You're right on how the process works. As Joe Wilson, Valerie Flame's husband, once told me, he said, whatever you do, Greg, do not shut up, okay? You shut up, especially about what you know, and they will come for you. Count it. They don't forget when something like this happens. People like the Bush crime family, they don't ever forgive and forget, all right? And they will come for you, okay? So the best thing to do is keep on talking, keep on speaking. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do with the help of you and several other really fabulous people, great people and brave people. Now, the irony, I don't know if I had a chance to think about it, but the irony is going back to 9/11, okay? Your listeners, okay, have heard me talk about how Anthony Schaefer and his team that were tracking the 19 hijackers, okay, how they gave us a briefing in Arizona. Okay? Everybody remembers that on your show, correct, Chuck?
Oh yeah, we've talked about that before, and Able Danger is one of those things that I've never known exactly what to do with, regarding the the whole conspiracy, as it were. And it is a conspiracy by definition. It's a conspiracy, whether you believe the official explanation or not. By definition, it's a conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm not misusing the word.
Absolutely. Right. The irony is as I said Able Danger, but up until 2 weeks ago, I didn't understand just how ironic and sardonic this situation is. Okay, and I'll tell your listeners right now, as up till 2 weeks ago, I assumed that the group from Able Danger that was briefing us, I assumed that they were all alive. Okay, that they were all alive and breathing. They were our age, my age, and very knowledgeable, very determined, very loyal to America, and they knew they were doing and onto something very big. All right. Well, I'm speaking of them in the past tense. The 23 members of Able Danger, okay, were in the one section of the Pentagon. Surprisingly, when I think it was a plane, everybody says it was a plane, hit the Pentagon, and surprise, two things were destroyed, okay? The entire Able Danger team was killed, except for, thank goodness, Anthony Schaefer. All right. Anthony Schaefer survived. He was in another section of the building. I'm sure that wasn't intended that he was in another part of the building. All right. The world's expert, the world's expert on bin Laden and Al Qaeda was in the South Tower when it was hit and destroyed. He was killed the same day, virtually within the same couple of hours. All right. Now, that plane that hit the section of the Pentagon, guess what else it took out? Okay. Does everybody remember? I think your listeners are so sharp, Chuck, that I'm sure they do remember. That's all I ever ask anybody is to remember something that I tell them. Okay. Remember that Donald Rumsfeld had come out briefly and said that there was $7 trillion missing. Okay. Does everybody remember that? Or am I just imagining it? Okay. $7 trillion missing from the defense budget and the U.S. budget. All right. It just went missing. Okay. Imagine. Okay. It just went missing. Well, who else? Okay. Except Dick Cheney could have been involved in something like that. But here's the deal, is that plane, when it destroyed Able Danger, it also destroyed the entire investigative team that was looking for the $7 trillion that just disappeared, okay, including the database and files. It wiped that whole section out and Able Danger. You know, and they say in the intelligence business.
Guess where one of the backups to that database was? Take a walk.
I have.
Building 7 in the World Trade Center complex.
Gee, oh gosh, the irony rolls on, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just keeps getting a little bit like coincidence, doesn't it?
There are no, Chuck and Barry, there are no coincidences in the intelligence business. Period.
I know that.
There are none.
I know that.
Okay?
I know that, sir. I'm being sarcastic, of course. Of course, everything that was meant to be happened that day for a reason. And I was well aware of what Rumsfeld said the day before and the fact that those records were destroyed. And I don't ever reference to a plane hitting the Pentagon because I've studied that too many times to ever believe that there is any kind of trace of an airplane hitting the Pentagon. It was definitely, in my opinion, a missile. And I wouldn't be convinced of anything else that in my life could do what that thing apparently did hit where it hit, did what it did aerodynamically. It's a physical possibility for an airplane to do that. So anyways, that being said, it was very convenient. Everything was destroyed in the Pentagon. And what Charles said was absolutely true. I was going to bring that up, Charles. The other backup records were in Tower 7, which of course came down 5:20 in the afternoon from a couple small pockets of fires burning inside the building.
Right. And of course, I still say that there's no evidence showing that the plane actually struck the Pentagon. But okay, you know, I know I'm out of my mind, but you know, I don't see a plane. I don't see the damage from a plane. I don't see the parts from the plane that they say hit the Pentagon. I've actually gone through and studied some of the official witnesses that were at Arlington Cemetery. Believe me, they were in a good spot to see the alleged approach of said plane. It doesn't fit with the official story. There's an aerodynamic problem with keeping a plane that low without scraping the ground or tumbling into the building, which it could not have done. So on and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But
there's 1,000 impossibilities with that one, Charles. And if anybody really ever looks at it, just alone the aerodynamics of what that aircraft apparently did. There's a site on the internet now, of course, and it's pilots against 9/11, and they'll tell you, man, there's no pilot in the world that could have done what this guy did after going to a flight school and learning how to fly on a Cessna. So, anyways, that being said, we won't talk about that anymore.
Yeah, that being said, we both felt the need to address that.
Yeah, that was pretty ironic, but you know,
the only other thing I'd like to address, and maybe you have people call in, that'd be great. Is tell me, okay, and I'm a little bit indignant, okay. Like I say, for an average guy, I've had a few indignancies concerning the whole issue. This really did affect my life. You know, Mr. Average gets his life affected, okay. That's the way you can look at my issues. Now, one of the things I don't quite understand, explain to me, please. When Flight 93 was over Pennsylvania, okay, headed back to Washington, okay. Let's assume that was the case. and then the open mic, the hot mic that was on, okay, and of course nobody said let's roll, okay. No, it was seen by several planes, and on the way back, passing that plane, and they said, okay, yes, there was clearly something going on that plane. Well, yes, there was. The passengers, and it's assumed that that everybody, especially our government, assumes that everybody's stupid, and when it comes to having their lives threatened, they're going to sit there and passively take it. All right. Well, they didn't on that plane, and that's actually what got them killed. Okay, but it got them killed for this reason: is they several groups rushed, and it doesn't take much to break into the cockpit to get control of that plane. The way I understand it, and yes, the hot mic was on. They very clearly heard the passengers, the ELINT that were going, the electronic intercepts, heard these people that broke into the cockpit said, yes, we've got control of the plane. All right. Those few words right there condemned those people to a fiery death. Because what happened then, and Dick Cheney said it, he said it, 3 or 4 years ago? He said, yes, I ordered Flight 93 shot down. And what I don't understand is, yes, the heat shear, half the engine was miles away when they found it, was it the starboard engine, was several miles away from the actual crash site. Heat shear had cut it in half, all right? That only comes from a missile, an air-to-air missile. And what happened then was Dick Cheney says, oh, yeah, it's kind of like O.J. finally admitting that he killed his wife, and the waiter, yeah, I did it, so what, Well, that's exactly the attitude that Cheney had a few years ago. Said, yeah, I shot it down, so what?
Yeah, so what?
But where was the outrage? Where was the uproar? It's just like 3 or 4 days ago, the CIA says, of course, they said it on President's Day, intentionally when nobody was really around, but they said, oh yeah, we've been buying weapons of mass destruction back for years. Where is the outrage? Have we gone to sleep? What are we, the second or third generation now of the Leave No Imbecile Behind program, the education program that George Bush launched with that crook brother of his, Neil Bush, and Barbara Bush, the great humanitarian mother of theirs. Are people are people numbed and stupid? Where they're not outraged when they hear something like this? That's what I'd like to know, Chuck. I mean, can your listeners call in and explain to me, explain to Mr. Average why there's not unbelievable outrage and fury, over this. We've been told for 12 years, oh yeah, there were no weapons of mass destruction. And George was having these little skits there in the Oval Office about weapons of mass destruction. Are they hidden under his couch in the Oval Office? All this nonsense. Yes, there were. Yes, we knew it. Yes, the agency has been buying back these weapons of mass destruction and from Iraq and Syria. Where did I make my reports to the FBI about Iraq and Syria, weapons of mass destruction, and transported out of Iraq to select targets south of Damascus? Where's the outrage now? I'd like to know that. I'd like to hear from your listeners, Chuck. I really would.
Well, I'll tell you what. If anybody wants to call in, I have the phones, 718-717-8296. You can call in. I'll drop you right on the air. Not a problem. If you're on my Skype list, you can also join that way. I'll bring you right in. No screener, no nothing. And you can explain this to both of us. Because I don't get it either.
Please do.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
Maybe you could explain about the other things that should be outrageous.
In a short period of time, like I say, Mr. Average here, your guest here, has thought of a way to save America and save the world from being incinerated. All right, because if left to the idiots, the Leave No Child Behind or Leave No Imbecile Behind, programmers. Yes, it's going to happen. I've got it though, and this is a cheap, easy method for curing what ails the world now, okay? ISIS will back down, okay? ISIS, I guarantee, will back down, okay? All these other groups, Abu Sayyaf, all these other, knuckleheads, that are determined, to chop somebody's head off, hey, they will stop what they were doing, and they will look to the West, okay? Here's what we do. Right? Are you ready for this? Are you still there, Chuck? Barry?
Yeah, I'm still here. Somebody was trying to call in there. Somebody was trying to call.
Oh, okay. I think it sounded like we were getting a little NSA introduction there.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
We actually, anytime we're on the air, we should actually say hello to those people, shouldn't we? Because we know they're listening to our conversation. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you doing out there?
Yes.
Yeah, there is a caller here.
NSA and Me Too. Yeah, the Me Too effort by NSA. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's what we do.
We have another caller. Hello.
Okay, great.
Hey,
How you doing?
not too bad, Chuck. Thanks for having this episode on. I'd like to change the focus for just a second. Stay within the realm of the topic, though. I'd like to know if the guests know anything about the dancing Israelis, the 5 Israelis, the only people that were arrested on the day of 9/11. The only people that were arrested that were taken in, Israeli agents, and then released and sent back home to Israel about 72 days later. No charges filed. I'd like to hear what the guests have to say about that.
Well, you mean the art students that were leaping?
Negative, sir. I don't mean the art. No, sir. Not the art students that had been living within the World Trade Center and had all access as passes to both towers. I mean the 5 Israeli agents that were arrested videotaping the event. They had cameras set up, cameras on tripods set up, videotaping the event. They were there in place prior to it, and a concerned citizen of New York saw this and thought it to be a little odd, called the police, gave a very good description. They were arrested. Turns out they all had Israeli passports, box cutters, something like $8,000-9,000 in cash, and the first thing out of their mouths were, "We are not your problem. The Palestinians are your problem. We are Israelis. We are your friends." These were the only men arrested on 9/11, the only men other than the Zacharias Moussaoui who have been charged with this crime, and they didn't even get charged. They got sent home, and then a couple of weeks after they go home, they go on an Israeli TV show and say, "We were there to document the event." I'd like to know how that plays into this, guys.
Wow, that's a mouthful. I'm sorry. What was the caller's first name?
My name is Michael. My name is Mike.
Great. Okay, Michael. If I might respond to that. Okay. Yes, this is a question that I've had all along. Was this a false flag operation? 9/11. All right. And if it was a false flag operation, I think that answers your statement in question. Okay.
Well, gentlemen, if the Israelis were involved in this, it's not a false flag operation. It's an attack on this nation. That's an attack from a foreign nation. Israel is not a part of this nation. No matter what they tell you on TV, their interests are not similar to ours. Netanyahu went on TV within 3 days after that happening and said that this would be very, very good for Israel.
Well, you know what the problem is that the Mossad is intermingled with the CIA.
Michael Chertoff, the head of DHS, was the ones who sent them home. And remember, Michael Chertoff also has the company that had the nudie scanners that had to go into every goddamn airport. And now they figured out that, they might unzip your DNA, so we'll just put them in prisons instead.
Oh, of course. But the thing is that you got to understand that, and they weren't the only ones arrested on that day. Let's not say that. The thing is this: there were others arrested, but the fact is that the Mossad is completely embedded in our intelligence assets as well. Every time I talk to anybody who is an operative in any place around the world, and believe me, I've talked to people all over the map about things, you wouldn't even believe the stuff I've tried to look into, stuff in the Congo even, okay? You can find Mossad agents that are just present. I mean, even Mr. Ford will tell you, I don't know. You know what? We haven't discussed this before, but tell me something, Mr. Ford. You're sitting there with CIA guys over in Abu Ghraib. You're dealing with these prisoners. You're dealing with this torture situation. Question for you. Was there Mossad people or Israeli operatives that were present in that theater also?
Yes, there were. All right. And I confirmed this, what you think, this question, I confirmed this with the Brigadier, General Karpinski. I said, exact words, General, were those Israelis, okay, in Abu Ghraib? And she said, yes. And I said, how the hell did they get into a CIA, DOD intelligence operation? And she said, I asked them the same question, and they told me, they looked me right square in the eye and said, that's none of your business, General, and if you don't like it, take it up with Washington. Okay?
But, gentlemen, I hesitate to say, if somebody doesn't take it up with Washington, the American people are going to take it up with them. Because this is, once the American people know the extent of the Israeli involvement, coupled with the $3 to $6 billion a year in cash we send them, and the 10 to 20 billion a year, depending on how many times they bomb the Palestinians, and we have to replenish them. Once the people figure out what the hell's going on, they're going down. So it better start coming out.
You know, Michael and Chuck, and I think Barry is still around. Okay, I had a friend, and she is no longer with us. Okay, she mysteriously committed suicide. All right, and I want you to type in this name when you can, the name Jean Palfrey. All right, Palfrey. All right, and type it in and see what you come up with. All right, because she, like I said, is no longer with us, but you will be amazed at what you come up with. And what she told me about this exact subject is overwhelming.
That would be the D.C. Madam. Is that who you're referring to?
Yes. Yes, Michael, you are right on top of it. Yes.
Sure. I'm gonna listen off air. I really appreciate you, Chuck, giving me the chance to ask this question. Thanks a lot, guys. Please pursue this issue. It's important to our vital interests, our national interests.
Absolutely. And remember the liberty, Michael. Remember the liberty.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
There you go. Thanks for calling in. I really appreciate it. And, this is one of the questions that always comes up, and they are absolutely part of this equation regarding the false flag activity, regarding the obfuscation of the real agenda that's going on, constantly involved in these situations where they do not belong. There is nothing but a criminal state that exists there. This is my words now. Okay, so this is just me. There is nothing but a criminal state that exists, in that particular area of the world, which, I thought was Palestine. But, and the historical idea and the biblical idea of Israel has nothing to do with the creature that sits on the planet at this moment. So let's keep that in mind. Again, my words, okay? So, moving forward, Mr. Ford, we only have, let's see now, looks like we have about 25 minutes left, okay? And I know there was a couple of things that you wanted to get to tonight, unless you want to comment a little more about what Michael was asking, or if Barry has a comment, feel free to jump in, Barry. But I know there was a couple of other things you kind of wanted to cover as well.
Okay. I always want to cover. Okay. And thank you for letting me do that on your show. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not boring your listeners half to death. Okay. Now, like I said, all the aspects of why we went to Iraq, okay, have been covered. All right. We went to Iraq to take care of Bush crime family business. All right. It doesn't have any more more sophisticated or complex than that. Okay, there were no terrorists coming out of Iraq. All right, there were no terrorists. Al-Qaeda was not even allowed into Iraq. Al-Qaeda, as I was informed, okay, at the hospital, okay, Al-Qaeda took over the hospital, by the way, which was next to the police station. All right. Now, everybody's just amazed by it, okay? Like I said, I'm Mr. Average, just happened to be placed by fate into some very interesting positions, okay? You know, those are my closing days of my career, and I was ready to retire. Al-Qaeda, okay, now everybody says, well, gosh, Al-Qaeda, you know, they didn't tear your arms off and legs off, okay? Well, actually, it was very interesting. Al-Qaeda came in, they stated to me at the time that they were there for relief efforts in Samara, the city of Samara, and they followed us in. Now, of course, later on that evening, my asset showed up, my agent showed up, who was a banker, and said, yes, Al-Qaeda is telling the truth. And he said, you people do know about Al-Qaeda, correct? I said, yes, we do. And he said, here's what's going on. Al-Qaeda followed you in. They were not here under Hussein. All right? That's why everybody was in Iraq kept saying, why is America after us? You know, what did we do to America? Okay? Why are they going to destroy us and invade us? Okay? And so Al-Qaeda followed us in. And then Mr. Banker turned out to be the banker for Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda moves its terrorist operations, which have to be financed via gold, okay? G-O-L-D, gold, okay? Nothing exotic like blood diamonds or anything else, gold, all right? And he produced, that show you how our intelligence efforts have botched things badly. My source produced the transfer notes, the Orion license transfer notes, okay, for all the gold that Al-Qaeda brought in. All right, he gave me copies, and I sent those to my command. That's what intelligence agents do. They get information like this, they send it to the analysts and the command, the oversight management teams, okay, that watch.
You know what, though? It's my long-held opinion that you use the word botched here. I don't think it was botched. I think it was absolutely intentionally done. You know, this is why I refer to Al-Qaeda as Al-Qaeda, because this exactly grew up out of the fact that we were, you know, backing the Mujahideen. Okay, this is where this came from. These were, you know, this is... it's so backwards, because flipping sides back and forth over there has been the name of the game. Okay, you know, just because, you know, we have named them the boogeyman at this point, you know, this is what they are. And of course, you guys are being informed from a different side of things. I mean, I'm sure you've learned a lot that you were pretty much misinformed in a lot of cases regarding this kind of stuff. But I mean, really, who was holding the leash on those dogs exactly? You know, this is the big question, and I've always stated that this was pretty much, you know, our people. Now they've been marginalized, they've been split up, and you know, don't get confused with your, you know, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, you know, or on the Arabian Peninsula, I think it's called now, or whatever. You know, this is not something to be confused with this original construct. This whole thing, but they came right in along with the American invasion. Guess why? You know, and then meanwhile we had this American-born cleric later on, which, you know, we had to get rid of course, because he was over there doing his thing, and I know you know all about that, and I'm probably just belaboring points that I shouldn't, but I mean, to me this seems intentional, all of it. You know, and I mean everything from the torture to the destruction of that nation, to the dehumanization of the population, to the war on, you know, Muslim extremism, regardless of whether it does exist or doesn't exist, to the fact that, you know, there is now a significant population of individuals who are thoroughly angry with the United States for good reason, okay, because of what the people that were, you know, ostensibly under our flag we're doing, this is what has happened. And this has been the continuation of the agenda. Now, I can't say that I see clearly what the whole agenda is, but I mean, I don't think that any of this stuff, I never ever buy the failure of intelligence argument here. They always know what's going on. They always know who the players are. They always know where the financing is coming from. You know, I mean, and again, this is my opinion, not yours necessarily, Mr. Ford, but it's just one of those things that just, it kills me because people don't see that these things are not, you know, some happenstance that occurs. This is not done by accident. None of it.
Well, there was more to the story, Chuck.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, now after my source gave me these banking transfer papers, copies, and of course I forward those on to my command. He said a couple of very interesting things about Al Qaeda. He said, first of all, that there was somebody, that he had breakfast with almost every day that week, and he said his name is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. And I said, okay, great. That little ass bite that I had to threaten to find out where Jessica Lynch was, and he said, yes, yeah, he does have attitude, doesn't he? Okay, and I said, yes, he does. And he said, I want you to bring him in and control him. He has access to all Mukhabarat operations, intelligence operations, and has the information. More important, he has information on everyone that is a player in Syria and Iraq. If you can gain access to that information, you can control what goes on in Syria and Iraq, and for a large part, Iran. And it made sense to me, and so I requested that I recruit him, as you have to do, from my command. And as usual, I received no response back. But then my source said, please recruit this other fellow, Abdullah Talabani. And that last name might ring a bell with a lot of people. He became the first president of the new state of Kurdistan. All right, and so I did. I actually recruited Mr. Talabani and Mr. Baghdadi, al-Baghdadi. All right, so they came under our control. All we had to do was control them. Okay, all we had to do was keep an eye on them. Well, something very interesting happened. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I did ask my source. I said, are we in any danger with Al-Qaeda right next door? And he looked me right in the eye as if he was talking to a retarded child, diminished child. And he said this, I'll never forget it. He said, the Americans have nothing to worry about in Iraq. And I said, with Al-Qaeda right next door in the ancient capital of Mesopotamia, tomorrow, we don't. He said, no. He said, they are here to settle old scores with the Shia. That's what they're going to do, is they are going to attack the Shia and dismantle the Shia in Iraq. And I said, okay, all right. How do you want me to write this report up? Okay, that Al-Qaeda's here, but they're not going to attack us. He said, understand the way they think. You have to understand why they're here. And he said they are going to do a spectacular event, and they are going to initiate an insurgency in Iraq. Okay, he used a revolution in Iraq, but they are going to initiate a large event, and you people need to understand what's going to happen. If you don't, you people will be driven from Iraq. Drive the United States out of Iraq? It didn't seem reasonable at that point. Well, within 2 months, several members from the hospital walked through right past my police station where I was. They walked over and they proceeded to plant charges in the holiest shrine in all of Shia Islam, and that was the Askaraya Mosque, the Golden Mosque. Okay, In the Bible, you will see the golden city of Samarra. Well, it's the golden mosque of Azariah that was blown to bits. Okay, you can look it up. Have all your listeners look it up. And then 3 days later, surprise, they walked back and they blew up the world famous blue minaret. Okay, this was all in sight of the spiral mosque there at Samarra. And that initiated the insurgency that basically has gotten out of control. We knew it was coming. He told us it was coming. My reports said it was coming. Okay, and to this day, I'm still dumbfounded by the fact that I did not receive one confirming intelligence request. In all spying and intelligence work, you receive requests. You just don't go out and try to figure out what's important and what isn't. You have teams and teams of analysts that tell you what needs to be discovered. I did not receive one request, okay, one PIR as they call them, okay, priority request for intelligence from my command at any given time for that information about the fact that Al-Qaeda was in Iraq and was going to initiate an insurgency, do a spectacular event, like blow something up. Can you imagine that? Al-Qaeda blowing something up. Okay.
Well, and the only explanation for that, from an outsider's point of view, again, I've never been part of the intelligence community, but the only explanation that I can come up with that seems reasonable here is that they already knew this information. They didn't require confirmation because they already had it 10 times over. It was known in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think there is something to that. I've always been suspicious about Al-Qaeda, and I always thought if you listen very carefully, you could hear a very quiet oy going on with Al-Qaeda, all right? Very suspicious of it. And I think that is the case. I think, yes, it's a false flag operation. What better way to run a cellularized, compartmentalized organization like Al-Qaeda and have it funded, trained, transported, logistics, assigned intelligence by the U.S., which it always had been up until that point. Mm-hmm. Always. It's an American invention entirely, okay? And then to be able to distance ourselves from any events that happen with Al-Qaeda, you have deniability automatically with it. You have it false flagged, and you have it run by a premier intelligence group like the Israelis.
There you go. I don't even know what more can be said about that, except that yeah. Yeah. Barry, anything you want to ask at this point, or?
I'm just sitting here getting an education, Jack. You definitely have done a lot of research, my friend. And like I said, I'm just going to sit back and listen to what the man has to say. Chuck, not often I get to listen to a man like this, so go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's true. Frank Gregory Ford, by the way, look him up on the internet, and you can also witness the fact that various people have tried to tear down the story that he's tried to tell as well. But if you trace back the individuals that are trying to tear him down, because if you do just basic searches on him, you'll find people trying to discredit his story. But guess what? When you trace and you look at who tries to discredit stories, quite often you quite a bit learn about the character of an individual based on the enemies they keep. Okay, so think about that one while you're doing your searches. All right, people. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, Chuck, by the way, if I might state on the closing of your show, is that as I stated earlier, I can save the United States. I can save the world, okay, very cheaply, very inexpensively, all right? I can do it with 3 sets of handcuffs, all right? And of course, these handcuffs would be applied to Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, and Donald Rumsfeld, all right? Put those handcuffs on, put the bracelets right on them, and frog march them down to the local hoosegow, all right? And there, the Interpol warrants for their arrest can be served. And what would that do to the world? what would that do with our reputation in the world? All right, the world would shake. Okay, at the fact that we could actually hold our own leaders accountable for the 12-year disaster that has befallen almost everybody, has affected almost everybody. All right, it wouldn't be that tough to do that. Okay, if the CIA could prosecute somebody like John Curacao, who stood up and said, no, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who by the way, John Curacao, the CIA actually captured, okay, he should not have been tortured. We needed to find out exactly what he knew. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, excuse me. Yes, and it's the same situation, okay? He was prosecuted, John Curacao was prosecuted and thrown into prison to shut him up. Okay, he is in prison right now. John Curacao is in prison. Okay, believe me, if they could have figured out a way to get their hands on me, okay, I would probably be in the cell right next to John Curacao. So in the meantime, if we want to save America from any more disasters, any more endless wars of fighting terrorists, okay, fighting terrorists, I just love that. Okay, here's what we do: we march those three jokers, the three musketeers, right down to the local Hooskow, have them sent on a plane, and then flown to Nuremberg, Germany, where the charges are being read and formulated right for war crimes. Those three right there.
Interesting you bring up Nuremberg, because I was going to ask you about that just before we run out of time, because you have... There is an interesting, I don't know if you want to have this discussion on the air or not, but is that a possibility still, or?
I'm working on it. The one fellow, Scott Horton, okay, who opened up 5 years ago, he opened up the Nuremberg hearings with my story, okay, to a standing audience, okay, of applause, all right. I mean, there was standing room only when he introduced my story. So I am working on basically providing the speech, if I can provide the speech to the opening of the Nuremberg ceremony, as I am the only surviving renditioned intelligence officer of the United States. So I'm working on it. I am working on it, Chuck.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure if you wanted to discuss it or not, but there you go. That's a basic understanding. And Scott Horton did bring.
By the way,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think it would be great to see the dockets and see in striped pajamas, to see Dick Cheney, George W. Bush, and Donald Rumsfeld looking forlorn. Okay, how do they get there? Kind of looks on their faces. Okay, nothing could reward me more than that. And to know that there's probably several thousand American children that will probably be safer having those three behind bars. All right, they could take up residence next to Carlos, okay, the Jackal, okay, Fat Charles, okay, hey, they could plug in right next to him, and they could learn how to make office furniture and license, right next to Fat Charles. I think it'd be great. At least they'd learn a valuable skill besides destroying America and ripping off the American citizen every chance they get. I think that would be a very viable thing for America to do.
Well, I think you're being a little light on him myself, Mr. Ford. I'd take him out and string him up myself, but I can't say that because the TSA is listening to me. I didn't mean that, guys. I was only kidding. But yeah.
Yeah, be very careful. Be very careful.
I can't say that. But treason is treason, and you can put lipstick on it, you can dress it up, and you can call it what you want, but treason is treason. And in my opinion, they're all guilty of it, so we'll just leave it at that.
They have something very interesting that has termed what those three have done to America, all right? They all come from robber baron families, all right? And they know that they've been in place. They went to the best schools to learn how to rob from the American system, all right? Prescott Bush, okay, is there anybody out there would say that Prescott Bush was a great man? Yeah, he was busy helping the Germans, and their war machine filled up.
To my show, if they think that, I'll tell you that much. They're not listening to this show. Mm-mm.
No, Prescott Bush actually introduced and received the royalties from Cyclone B, which killed millions and millions of Jews in concentration camps. Okay, what a great man. What a fine man. Okay. And so what happens? Okay, all of a sudden, this intelligence group, this organization forms at the end of World War II from the old OSS called Central Intelligence Agency. Guess who is one of their main players? George H.W. Bush. Okay, am I seeing a pattern forming here? Okay, these Robert Barron's elite have been starting these wars and making gazillions of dollars, okay, by the slaughter of American boys and killing of American citizens. Am I wrong? Is anybody out there, does anybody think I'm wrong? Please call in and think I'm wrong, okay? But I think that would be a great end to this terrorism chapter if those three little paltroons could be hooked up, frog marched, okay? Frog marched down and had war crimes, the greatest war crimes that have been committed under their name at their hands, war crimes, and they be held responsible for the 12,000 dead Americans and how many dead Iraqis, how many dead Afghanis, okay, and to stop the next couple of wars that I see right on the horizon. We're right on the horizon of a couple of new endless wars, okay? So I think that's a great idea.
I don't know if it would save the world, but it would definitely put a stop to a lot of things, and it would be a hell of a good start, for sure, to see those guys do a perp walk. Absolutely. Nobody listening to the show is going to argue with you there.
Right.
This is part of the point. So,
what could ISIS say to us? That, okay? What could people like Saddam Hussein say to us? Hey, you're calling me a mass murderer. And he has all the receipts from our WMD. Okay, it would be real simple. It's just that simple. Frog march those three down to the Hooskow, all right, and put them on a plane and fly them through German airspace. Gee, who do we know that was flown through German airspace against their will? Okay, yeah, you're talking to him right now, all right. Nothing. I would forgo my damages, my monetary damages by the federal government if I could see that. Okay, if I could see that, that would be a great amount of satisfaction for me. All right, personally. I think everybody listening to me, I think, would agree with that. Okay.
We all throwing a buck for that one, buddy. And the house of cards that would come down behind it would be monumental. We all know that.
Absolutely. And look, we're just about at the end here. We're going to run out of time. I want to thank everybody for listening to the Ochelli Effect. I haven't identified the show in a while here on UCY.TV radio. In case you're listening on some other device, it's at ucy.tv/TOE, and the archive will drop there like in about 1 minute after the show in case you missed any of this. My guest tonight was Frank Gregory Ford, an incredible individual who went through some amazing experiences. He calls himself an average man, but an average man wouldn't have survived. And I know we're going to have this discussion again because we didn't get to half of what it was I wanted to talk to you about. You've been on the show several times, and I really appreciate all the time you put into it. And I'm extremely proud and happy to present this story because it needs to be told. I'm not happy with the story just for my listeners' sake, but I am extremely happy to be able to expose exactly what's going on. You got to look behind the curtains. You got to understand that all of this stuff is being conducted in front of your faces to keep you distracted from the real criminals, just like the individuals we were talking about that need to do that perp walk. Okay, and as he said,
webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things.
I said to
all
myself,
these books,
that guy
how can that be
reminds me
possible? You know, people's fondle slab of choice and on computers, internet, professional wrestlers, and not just even tourist style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because here's